This is a recording of me reading lesson 2 from chapter 1. It begins on page 13 in our textbook. So if you could follow along, I'm not going to be able to elaborate as much because time cut me off on the last one. So I'm just going to go through and read. This is my first time hunting with the men. Though it is cold, my hand is sweaty as I grip my spear, trying to listen to every sound in every direction. It is a reindeer, I think, or maybe it is a horse. I have heard these sounds before. We move slowly, quietly. We don't want to scare it. We need the food. We need the skins for warmer clothing. We need to make our shelters warmer and sturdier as the days grow shorter and the nights grow colder. We must be successful. We must. The survival of the group depends on us. It is clear that reindeer, red deer, horse, ibex or wild goat, and bison were the mainstays of the late Upper Paleolithic subsistence, and that these species were taken in numbers and with tactics and weapons which were unprecedented in the history of the hominid adaptations. Besides using meat, marrow, which is soft tissue inside bones, and brains of mammals for food, hunters also employed bone for fuel, skins for clothing and shelter, antlers for tools and art objects, and teeth for ornaments, sinew, which is body tendons, and for cordage, which is ropes and things like that. The Paleolithic Age. Our guiding question for the first section is, what was life like during the Paleolithic Age? Historians call the early period of human history the Stone Age. They do this because it was the time when people used stones to make tools and weapons. The earliest part of this period was the Paleolithic Age. In Greek, Paleolithic means old stone. Therefore, Paleolithic Age is also called the Old Stone Age. The Paleolithic Age began about 2.5 million years ago and lasted until around 8,000 BCE. Remember, that is about 4,500 years earlier than recorded time, which starts about 5,500 years ago. Surviving in the Paleolithic Age. Try to imagine what life was like in the Paleolithic Age. Think about living in a time long before any roads, farms, or villages existed. Paleolithic people often moved around in search of food. They were nomads, or people who regularly moved from place to survive. They traveled in groups or bands of about 20 to 30 members. Paleolithic people survived by hunting and gathering. The search for food was their main activity, and it was often difficult. They had to learn which animals to hunt and which plants to eat. Paleolithic people hunted buffalo, bison, wild goats, reindeer, and other animals depending on where they lived. Along the coastal areas, they fished. These early people also gathered wild nuts, berries, fruits, wild grains, and plants. Finding food. Paleolithic men and women performed different tasks within the group. Men, not women, hunted large animals. They often had to search far from their camp. Men had to learn how animals behaved and how to hunt them. They had to develop tracking methods. At first, men used clubs or drove the animals off cliffs to kill them. Over time, however, Paleolithic people developed tools and weapons to help them hunt. The traps and spears they made increased their chance of killing their prey. Identifying causes. Why did these people move together as a group? Women stayed close to camp, which was often located near a stream or other body of water. They looked after the children and searched nearby woods and meadows for berries, nuts, and grains. Women taught the children which foods were edible. They trapped small animals and kept the camp safe. Everyone worked to find food because it was the key to the group's survival. Some scientists believe that an equal relationship existed between Paleolithic men and women. It is likely that both made decisions that affected the band or the group. Some evidence suggests that some men and women may have hunted in monogamous pairs. Monogamous means one man and one woman worked together to find food for themselves and for their children. Such groupings became the very first families. Citizenship. Like people today, Paleolithic people worked together to help keep their group safe and productive. Finding food to keep the group well fed was the most important aspect of survival. So men hunted and women gathered, though there was some evidence that women may have hunted as well. Women also took care of the children. Through teamwork, Paleolithic people survived generation after generation. In the modern world, people work in many industries: military, healthcare, banking, food services, plumbing, teaching, music, and more to help keep society moving. The invention of tools. Culture is the way of life for a group of people who share similar beliefs and customs. The methods Paleolithic people used to hunt and gather their food were part of their culture, as were the tools they used. Technology, just tools and methods crafted to perform tasks, was used by the Paleolithic people. Before this time, sticks and stones and tree branches served as tools. Later, people made devices from hard stone called flint. Have you ever imagined how difficult it would be to prepare or eat food without a cutting tool? Paleolithic people learned that by hitting flint with another hard stone, the flint would flake into pieces. These pieces had very sharp edges that could be used for cutting. Hand axes, for example, were large pieces of flint tied to wooden poles. Flint technology was a major breakthrough for the early people. Paleolithic tools. The breakthroughs seem to have happened almost simultaneously in different parts of the world. In the words of the archaeologist B.B. Redding, there is great similarity in these stone weapons and the implements wherever found throughout the world. A spearhead or scraper, an arrowhead or celt from England could not by itself shape or peculiarity of manufacture be distinguished from similar implements found in Denmark, Palestine, Japan, or South America. The stones the stones used might be different, but the mode of manufacture and the general shape are nearly always the same. So what he's saying is that no matter where you went in the world at this time, this technology was happening simultaneously and independently. Because remember, they didn't have cell phones to talk to each other. Over time, early people made better, more complex tools. Spears and bows and arrows made killing large animals easier by allowing hunters to kill from farther away. Harpoons, or spears with sharp points, and fish hooks increased the number of fish caught. Early humans used sharp-edged tools to cut up plants and dig roots. They used scraping tools to clean animals and hides, which they used for clothing and shelter. By the end of the Paleolithic age, people were making smaller and sharper tools. They crafted needles from small animal bones to make nets and baskets to sew hides together for clothing. This technology had a far-reaching effect. It drove the development of a more advanced farming tools and influenced where people settled. Changing to survive. Climate affected how Paleolithic people lived. Some early people lived in cold climates and made clothing from animal skin to stay warm. They sought protection in available natural shelters such as caves and rock overhangs. Remember, there were no houses or apartment buildings as we know them in the Paleolithic age. Gradually, humans learned to make their own shelters. People constructed tents and huts of animal skin, brush, and wood. In very cold climates, some people made shelters from ice and snow. In regions where wood was scarce, Paleolithic people used large bones from dead woolly mammoths, or hairy elephant-like animals to build frames for shelters. Then they covered the bone with animal hides. People living in warmer climates, on the other hand, needed little clothing or shelter. For the purpose of safety and comfort, however, many lived in caves and huts. These shelters provided protection against attacks by large animals. Life became less difficult for Paleolithic people once they discovered how to make fire. People learned that fire provided warmth in cold caves. It provided light when it was dark, and it could be used to scare away wild animals. Armed with spears, hunters could also use fire to chase animals from bushes to be killed. Eventually, people gathered around fires to share stories and cook. Cooked food, they discovered, tasted better, and it was easier to chew and digest. In addition, meat that was smoked by fire did not have to be eaten right away and could be stored. How did people learn to use fire? Archaeologists believe early humans produced fire by friction. They learned that by rubbing two pieces of wood together, the wood became heated and charred. When the wood became hot enough, it caught fire. Paleolithic people continued rubbing wood together, eventually developing drill-like wooden tools to start fires. They also discovered that certain stone, iron pyrite, gave off sparks when struck against another rock. The sparks could ignite dry grass or leaves, which is another way to start a fire. Language and art. Other advancements took place during the Paleolithic Age. One important advancement was the development of spoken language. Up until this time, early people communicated through sounds and physical gestures. Then they began to develop language. Ancient people started to express themselves in words for the same reason we do. We use language to communicate information and emotions. Language makes it easier for us to work together and to pass on knowledge. We also use words to express our thoughts and feelings. The spoken language of the early people was constantly growing and changing. New technology and more complicated experiences, for example, required new words. Early people also expressed themselves through art. Some of this art can still be seen today, even though it is thousands of years old. For example, in 1879, a young girl named Maria de Satola, wandered into a cave on her grandfather's farm near Altamira, Spain. She was startled by what she discovered on the walls of the cave. Maria entered the cave and suddenly reappeared all excited, shouting, "Papa!" And those of you who read Spanish, can you read that out loud? And it says, "Papa, look, painted bulls." Maria had discovered one of the most famous animal art galleries in all of the world. About 10,000 years before Maria's visit, Paleolithic artists had painted mysterious signs on cave ceilings. Some of the paintings were the shapes of handprints. Many of the signs, however, were in the shapes of animals. Images of horses, boars, bison, and deer can be found in the cave. In 1940, a cave with similar paintings to those in Spain was discovered near La Chaux in southern France by a group of teenagers exploring the area. Remember, we went to that cave in our web quest. This striking, I'm going to skip down. Paleolithic cave paintings have been found all around the world. Early artists crushed yellow, black, and red rocks and combined them with animal fat to make paint. They used twigs and their fingerprints to apply the paints to the rock walls. They later used brushes made from animal hair. Early people created scenes of lions, oxen, panthers, and other animals. Few humans, however, appeared in these paintings. Historians are not sure why these artists chose to make cave paintings. Early people may have thought that painting an animal would bring hunters good luck. Some scholars believe, however, that the paintings may have been created to record the group's history. They may have been created simply to be enjoyed. The Ice Ages. The guiding question is, how did people adapt to survive during the Ice Ages? Tools and fires were two important technological developments of the Paleolithic people. Throughout history, people have used technology to help them survive when the environment changes. The Ice Ages were major environmental disturbances. The changes they brought about threatened the very survival of humans. So if the video cuts me off, make sure you just continue reading the last paragraph. The Ice Ages were long periods of extreme cold that affected all of Earth. The most recent Ice Age began about 100,000 years ago. Thick sheets of ice moved across large parts of Europe, Asia, and North America. As the ice sheets or glaciers grew larger, The water level of the ocean was lowered. The lower sea levels exposed a strip of dry land connecting the continents of Asia and North America.